Chapter 5.55555, All the Ones, by Skye. Hours later, I was lying in the treehouse in the dark. "You awake?" whispered Six. "I am now," I said, pretending to be grumpy. "Sorry," said Six. I giggled. "I was already awake. Are you all right?" "I think so." "It's 1:11, I said, staring at the digital clock by my bed. So often when I look at the clock, there are ones. Why is that? I love seeing 11:11, partly because it's my birthday date, but I also love 1:11, all the ones. It suddenly seemed to make sense. Six and Jemima and I needed to be one person, not lots of ones. One person, one me, one Skye Walker. Six smiled at me as she sucked her thumb. I smiled back at her, remembering how much I had enjoyed sucking my thumb when I was small. I stroked Six's soft hair, thinking about how much I would miss having her wildness about the place after I was put back together. She certainly knew how to brighten things up. Out the window I could see the moon's beams sparkling on the ocean. It was so beautiful, but it also made me feel sad. I was surrounded by so many lovely things, but inside I had a deep sense of sorrow. Why did I have to splinter into pieces? A sudden hatred for Isla rose up in me. I felt angry that she'd forced me to live at her centre when her secret plan had been to ruin my life and Ben's. The time virus had corroded everything that should have been good. It had brought all the horror of seeing my parents die, and then the terror of being in a coma. Ben had been so scared that I wouldn't make it. After I'd splintered into pieces and we were forced to live with the thieves, we discovered what it's like to be terrified all the time. I'd comforted myself that I had my beautiful wings, but the Overlord had ruined those. Although having Jemima kidnapped was the worst. I felt so afraid that we'd never find her, that I'd be limping along forever, only half alive. Or if the worst happened, I wouldn't make it at all. Knowing that none of it should have happened was suddenly too much. I allowed 2 tears to fall onto my pillow, but that was all. I'd trained myself at Lowood not to cry. It was a hard habit to break. I pulled myself together by thinking that Mum and Dad might somehow still be alive, somewhere in time and space. A buzz of hope shot into my heart, but I couldn't let myself get too excited in case it wasn't true. I worried that I should sleep so that I'd have strength for the trip into the Noesis. I thought about as many good things as I could to try and make myself drowsy. After a while, I felt as if a warm chocolate was being poured into my mind and everything became calm. Before long, I was making little snoring sounds. Just like Angel had promised, I dreamed about the best things: surfing with Dad, riding through the Noesis with Minnow, and having adventures with Mum, who had turned out to be a time wizard. Chapter 6, The Melting Classroom, by Skye. When I woke up, Darling was standing next to our bed, smiling, ready to hand out raspberry milkshakes and toast with cinnamon and butter. "Good morning, girls," she said, her tiny flamingo face looking so kind. "Did you sleep well?" We all nodded, yawning. As I stretched my arms out wide, I said, "Hey, my back feels so much better, and my shoulder blades too, and my head." Darling looked proud. "My healing blanket is full of goodness," she said. "Plus, Miss Matrix knows how to infuse wellness into everything she makes." I stood up and kissed Darling on the beak. "Oh my," she said, fluttering her eyelids. Thank you indeed." After eating our breakfast, we heard Blizzard's voice booming. "Everyone, observatory, now!" We all dressed as quickly as we could and ran in to see him. "Listen up," he said. Angel and Miguel have been called away, so it's only me today." "Is everything okay?" asked Jax. "Perfectly," said Blizzard. "Now, before we go to the Noesis, I'm going to give a quick lesson in the melting classroom, and after that we'll have a swim in the indigo sea." "Right now," groaned Solo. "You of all people should know that it will give us protection," said Blizzard, "something that won't be achieved by moaning." Solo looked down, and I thought I could see him blushing. "I think you're the perfect fellow to lead the way to the melting classroom," said Blizzard. "Skye and Ben, your dad designed the room we're going to. It's amazing." Ben beamed at me. We both felt so happy to be near something Dad had designed. Solo jumped up and led us through quite a lot of darkened corridors, then along some outdoor bridges which were entwined with the twisted branches of the Marescimar tree, and lastly up a long, narrow staircase that ended in an enormous classroom, which was a kind of hybrid holograph suspended in mid-air, high above the ground. Inside were around 100 students, aged from about 2 years old right through to hundreds, maybe thousands of years old. The room was full of holographic objects, tables and chairs, trees and flowers, and so much more. Everything came into form and then melted away as if by magic. If you were sitting on a chair when it melted, you might suddenly find yourself seated on a hedge or a rock or the branch of a tree. It all happened quite slowly, but the entire room was constantly changing. Blizzard stood on a revolving podium in the middle of everyone. "Good morning to you," he said to a loud cheer. I looked at Minnow. This was too good. "Moan, moan, moan," Blizzard continued. "This is what many of us were brought up with, the constant dull thrum of people talking about what's wrong with their lives." Blizzard looked at Solo with a wry grin. Solo gave him a thumbs up, looking a bit bashful about his recent groaning. Everyone else sat gazing at Blizzard, waiting for more. "But there is so much that's lovely," said Blizzard. "The sky," called an angel at the far end of the room. "The sea," said a little boy who was sitting right underneath Blizzard's podium. "I have one," said Jax. "We have with us today Omar Walker's children, Ben and Skye." Ben and I felt awkward as everyone stared at us and cheered. "Their father designed this amazing structure," said Blizzard. "It takes a brilliant mind to dream up a melting classroom, so here's to that." Everyone cheered again. "The fact that I can shout loudly," yelled a teenaged girl at the top of her voice. She was dressed in black and had strange tattoos all over her face. "Being here," shouted a changeling who had the head of a girl and the body of a kangaroo. "Being surrounded by all of you." "Being in the melting classroom," shouted Escher and Solo at exactly the same time. They slapped their hands together and said, "Snap." Blizzard laughed, and then we all started laughing, every one of us, all at once. It was the most wonderful feeling. Some of us fell on the ground, unable to stop ourselves. I felt as though my face would burst. I was so happy. Blizzard let us continue to giggle and splutter and laugh out loud for about 5 minutes. It still makes me laugh just to think of it. After that, the strangest thing happened. We all rose up into the air about 3 feet, and an enormous calm filled the room. "Breathe it in," said Blizzard quietly. "Fill your lungs and close your eyes." We all remained in that peaceful place for how long I'm not really sure. It was probably about 3 minutes, but it felt like forever. After that, Blizzard said, "Class dismissed." Everyone roared, "Thank you, Blizzard." It was so loud that I wondered if there'd also been a big rumble of thunder. Blizzard strode over to us and said, "Jax, will you lead the way to the beach? Skye, walk with me." "That was amazing," I said. "I love the melting classroom," said Blizzard. One never quite knows what will happen. Well done, Dad, I whispered. Well done indeed, whispered Blizzard with a grin. Chapter 6.6 The University by Skye. Heading outside, Blizzard put on his round sunglasses with half mirror, half black lenses. He looked like a rock star, and I felt proud to be walking with him. The university's gardens were spectacular, with magic plants everywhere. A long vine snaked its way through the air, its purple flowers beaming at me with their tiny faces. Welcome, said each one, smiling. Thank you, I said, as the vine snapped back into place. Blizzard grinned. The physics of enchantment, he said. It's all around. I'll take you to one of my lectures on it. You can tell the students how Jax's sofa and chairs help to heal you. I'd love to, I said. I had to walk fast to keep up with Blizzard, who was striding through the crowded main thoroughfare. Of course, all the students were curious, watching the newcomers, wondering why we were at Marescimar. A few of the more confident students called out to Blizzard, "Welcome back, Blizz," or "Blizzard, legend." We felt like we were in the company of royalty. One group of girls giggled uncontrollably as Escher and Solo walked past. "Idiots," said Jax. "Gorgeous idiots," said Solo, staring back at the girls. Jax raised her eyebrows at me and shook her head. "See what I have to deal with?" she asked. I laughed, and the truth was I couldn't stop smiling. We were having the best adventure, and I was starting to feel more and more convinced that I'd soon be whole again. I had always known that Isla's school was a joke. In contrast, Marescimar felt like a real school, somewhere that valued people and knowing things and having fun. It seemed like a place where anyone would be excited to learn. I badly wanted to study there. As we neared the beach, I gazed back at the university. It was incredible. The main castle was made from sandstone, but some of the other buildings were a mixture of glass and stone or great sheets of granite. Others were ancient, made with huge rocks, orange and grey, and pieces of enormous timber. Still others seemed ethereal, as if they were holograms and bricks, somehow held together by some sort of living magic. One of the buildings seemed to be made of waterfalls. Of course, the tower in the middle of the main castle was incredible, with its massive Jack-and-the-Beanstalk tree tangled all around it, and on every third or fourth branch a magic tree house. The entrance to the beach was through a long tunnel of curved fruit trees, which had been trained to grow over a scaffold. Bees were humming in the flowers, and the smell of ripe fruit was everywhere. Jax and the others ran ahead. As Blizzard and I made our way to the beach, I noticed so many new smells. The flowers were more fragrant than anything I'd ever smelled, and an amazing scent was wafting up from the sand. It was like we were walking across cinnamon and vanilla. There was nutmeg as well. Christmas cake. It reminded me of my grandmother's Christmas cake. I've always loved Athena's cake, even though I find Christmas hard because Mum died a bit before Christmas Day. Still, it made me feel glad to have the sand smelling of all those spices and to feel the warmth of the beach. "Good, hey?" asked Blizzard. "The best," I said.